we're going to go back and go over the front page now that we've done the other 2 pages, and we're going to cover some concepts here on word problems. So we have a situation here where Miss Mooney is starting with 8 followers. To let us know, that means our A value, our starting value is 8. So our A, our initial value, is 8. Over here, if you look at our table, we have our y-intercept 0, 8. Okay, that's going back and thinking about our y equals a times b to the power of x. All right, so we have our a value factored. Now we're going to talk about our rest of the problem. It says she starts posting videos dancing with her students. Her followers are increasing, so that means we have growth. Okay, we are growing. So that is going to be when, in order for me to calculate, we're not multiplying by 45%. We're multiplying by a number greater than 1. So going back to our growth rate. So that's 1 plus our rate. Our rate is 45%. We need to represent that 45% as a decimal. So I'm going to take 45 and divide that by 100. And that's going to give me 0.45. So that's going to be 1 plus 0.45. Now, that means my B value, what I'm going to multiply each previous factor by, is that 1.45. Okay, that's what's giving us our next value. When we write our function, I'm going to write f of x, or you can even write y equals our starting value, which is 8, and then I'm going to put my B value, 1.45, to the power of x. Okay, now we're going to represent x. Reading the word problem, the number x represents the number of days. The y represents the total followers. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and go to Desmos. So real easy. I'm going to open this up. So let me move my screen. Oh, come on. And I'm going to open up Desmos and pull that over. All right, I'm going to not add a table. I want to write my function. I'm going to type my function exactly as it is here in that I wrote. So f of x equals 8 times parentheses 1.45. And then I'm going to do the keyboard here, and then I'm going to hit the A to the B button, and that's going to put it up. And then I'm going to put x. Now, there's a couple things that I'm going to do here and that I'm looking for. I want to make sure that my graph looks like an exponential, and we know this is growth, so our graph should be going up. So this is going to be, I'm double checking my thought process and my rate that I have it entered correctly. Now that I know that this looks correct, I have a growth and my y-intercept is 0, 8. I'm going to go ahead and convert this function to a table so I can fill out the rest of my graph. So I'm going to go to this wheel and I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to go to create table. Now I don't need the -2 and I don't need the -1. So I'm just going to click in it and I'm going to take it out. We're starting at 0. We go to 1, we go to 2. Then the next value is 14 and the value after that is 30. Okay. Now, let's talk about our values. When x is 1, so after 1 day, we have 11.6. Now, let's talk about our problem in terms of what that y represents. That represents the total number of followers. We're not going to have a partial followers, so I'm going to round that up to 12 followers. Same with 2 days. I'm going to go ahead and round that up to 17 followers. In fact, all of these I'm going to round up by 1 followers. So 14 days, she's going to have 1,453. 30 days, she's going to have 554,792. Okay. There is some leeway in here. You're going to be able to pick the right value based on rounding on your answer choices on the test. For right now, just kind of give me a ballpark of your rounding in terms of what you're thinking about and looking at. Okay. So for example, we're looking at the next question here on number 2. All right. Here we have James Harden is purchasing a Toyota Corolla for $20,000. So again, that is our A value. So 20,000. The decay, we're depreciating. So we know that's going to be 1 minus our rate. So that's going to be 1 minus 0.07. That's going to give me a b value. 1 minus 0.07 is going to give me 0.93. Okay, that's my b vector. That would be my multiplier. So when I create my function, f of x is going to be equal to 20,000 parentheses 0.93 to the power of x. My y value represents the total amount. The x value represents the year. Okay. You pretty much can go back if you're not unsure how to enter this table and write that table. Go back, rewind the video, and watch how we did it on the first table. I'm not going to do the table for each one of these. You can pretty much get the gist of it based off of that. So I'm going to go ahead and skip forward to number 3, specifically because it's worded a little bit different from 1 and 2. Mr. Hunt is teaching him, his students are teaching him slang. He started with 2 new slang words. So that means our starting value, our initial value is 2. And the number of slang words he learns triples each day. Now, think about this. What we're doing is we're multiplying each previous value by 3, not 1 plus 3. Our rate is not 300%. Our rate is a multiplier of 3. So our b value here would be 3. We're increasing by 200% because if I were to do 1 plus 2, that would give me my 3. So that was why here we'd be increasing by a 200% rate. That's what we mean by tripling. So this is really easy. When I write my function, that would be y equals, or you can also say f of x, 2 for our a value, and then 3 to the power of x. So again, you're gonna end up just putting that function in and creating your table and filling that out. You're looking at words. If you have decimals, you want to go ahead and round them. I think they're all whole numbers if I recall correctly. Again, your y represents the number of slang words, and the x represents the days. All right. Number 4, the biggest takeaway from number 4, we're starting with 100,000 cockroaches. And we have a rate of 7.5. Now remember, be careful. You're not doing, and we're decreasing. So we know that is 1 minus our rate. Okay. So that would be 1 minus. Now, it's not going to be 1 minus 7.5. We need to take that 7.5 because that's 7.5%. I need to divide that by 100. So that's 1 minus 0.075. Okay. That's going to give you 0.925 for our b value. So when we write our function, that's going to be y equals 100,000 times 0.925 to the power of x. Okay, be real careful when you're doing that and paying attention to that concept. All right, now we're going to go ahead and finish the last page. This is really easy, and you got to really think about this because this really is, we're going to go to the very last part. When we have a function, any of these functions, if we have an asymptote, that is a horizontal line, you have a horizontal line, y equals 0. Okay. If you do not have endpoints, so like example, this function, f of x is equal to 12 times our rate of 0.92. Okay. Our graph would look like something like this. So I have my y-intercept up here at 12, and this is a decay. Okay. My asymptote is going to be a horizontal line here, y equals 0. That would be the equation for the asymptote. That's a very key concept that I'm telling you for your test. When you see a word that says asymptote, you're just going to put y equals 0. Okay? Now, that is a line that is going to tell us and give us our understanding of our range. Our range is the y values, and that is always going to be greater than 0. And it is not going to be equal to 0. Our domain of a function is an easy one, all real numbers. Super easy. Okay? Now, I'm going to go over this question. This question, because we have an arrow on one side and an endpoint. Because we have an endpoint, we do not have an asymptote at this function. This is a part of an exponential function. Domain is our run. Rise is your, or range is your rise. Domain is going this way. What is my starting? This is y. This is x. Where these values intersect is the origin 0, 0. So that means the x value when y is 2, that's your y-intercept, that is going to be 0. So our domain is going to be x greater than or equal to 0. In the case of this, because we have a closed endpoint, we can be equal to that value. The range, we're going to be greater than or equal to y, and that starting y value is that y-intercept of 2. Okay? We're going to do the same thing on here. Now, again, pay real close attention. This is a question just like what's on your test. All right? Your domain, that is your run. Think you're running this way. Okay? What is our starting? Again, this is our origin, 0, 0. Your y-intercept is up there at 12. Okay? We're starting at 12 for the range and then going to, or really technically, yeah, we'd be starting at 12 and then going to 2. But I'm going to go ahead and talk about the domain and finish that. We're starting at 0, and it's going to be equal to 0. And then we're going to put x in the middle. And we are not going to be equal to 2. We're not going to be equal to 2 because that value there is open. Now we're going to look at our range. Range is from there to there, from here to there. We're starting here at 3, and then we're going all the way up to 12. We are not including 3 because that's an open circle. We got y, and then we are including 12. Super easy. Now, this function has an asymptote, and the reason that we say it's an asymptote and it's not readily visible on this graph is that that's an arrow there. So that means that continues. Our asymptote is going to be that y equals 0. Hoi. That means my range, now this is a little tricky because we do have a maximum range value. We do have an endpoint. So our range is going to be 0, less than, we are not going to include 0, and then less than or equal to that 25,000. Because we're going to be going from here to there. The domain is going to be x greater than or equal to 0. Okay, so the domain in this case is going to be including 0 because we can start at that y-intercept of 25,000. Okay, really easy on that question. All right, and then the last two questions. All right, we're going to do number 5 real quick. We know that our b value is greater than 1 because it's 2. So we have growth. The initial value is 10,000. Our domain, okay, we're starting at, again, this is 0, 0. So domain is going to be x greater than or equal to 0. We're going this way, okay? The range is going to be, we're starting at 10. So that's going to be y greater than or equal to 10. We do not have an asymptote here because we have that starting value, that y-intercept, okay? And we're not going below that. When we look at the months for World Series, I'm going to go to our number 3rd month, go up to our Y value, and that is 80. These are in the thousands. Really super duper easy. Okay, we're going to do the last question here. This is a really important question for y'all to understand. All right, Jacob starts at 100 in algebra, and then he decides to start skipping his algebra class. He once started skipping his grade, decreased 10% each every week. This is decay, so that means that's 1 minus our rate. Our rate is 10. So when we write our equation, that's going to be y equals 100 times 0.90 to the x power. Now, your domain. Your domain is going to be, we're starting at 0, 0. So it's going to be, you can look at it a couple ways. The domain is representing the number of weeks. Number of weeks. So we're starting at week 0. So you could say from week 0 to however many weeks. So I would say x is greater than or equal to 0. Or if they're asking like between 9 weeks, so what is his grade average in 9 weeks? So like, for example, Jacob's grade average skipping 9 weeks. All right, so grade average is right there. So that gives him about a 39% grade average. So if I were to talk about the domain for that, I would say 0 less than or equal to X less than or equal to 9 for the number of weeks. Okay. So the domain is going to kind of depend on how they might answer that in terms of your answer choices. Your range is going to be from 0 to 100. And in this case, again, we don't really have an asymptote because you are going to get to 0. You can have a grade average of 0. And we are going to have a maximum grade of 100. Now we want to go and finish up and find his grade average at 18 weeks, and that gives him an average of 15%. So his domain on that would be 0 less than or equal to X less than or equal to 18 weeks. Okie dokie. And that concludes the review, the study guide. Hopefully y'all do really well, and good luck.